Welcome to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you burn fat, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey guys, it's Debbie, and have you used a CGM before? CGM is continuous glucose monitor, and there's different options out there. Ideally, you can get it from your doctor, but they seem to just want to wait until you're type 2 diabetic and not be preventative. I would like us to take ownership of our health and make choices now to prevent having high, low glucose readings and optimize your health from the inside out by testing and not guessing. And that includes a CGM that goes on for 14 days, and you can order one via NutriSense. And a CGM is giving you glucose updates with a small device in the back of your arm 24/7. Totally easy. I actually did a video on my YouTube channel, Low Carb Athlete, how to apply this CGM. First time, you're kind of scared, but it doesn't hurt. But it gives you real-time glucose readings. Glucose response to meals. You'll learn about what foods are reactive to you, and that could be a healthy food that you think is great, but it could raise your glucose. Simple things as stevia, for me, raise my glucose. Chewing gum, raise my glucose. Stress, when I'm driving a car and there's traffic, raises my glucose. Every stress response is a glucose response. So learn how to manage your stress. Learn how to pick right foods for you, unless you can, do other lab testing and figure out vibrant wellness food zoomers, but it's kind of expensive for people. So if you can wear a CGM, it's a great way to learn about stress, food, exercise, stacking movement with your nutrition. Figure out how to balance your blood sugar. So we want to learn more about how to exercise and eat or not eat. And morning cortisol, does it raise your glucose? If there's hidden stressors at nighttime, does your glucose go up higher while you're sleeping? So it gives us lots of clues that we can put in our investigation when we are working on your personalized fueling, training, and performance program to improve fat loss, performance, and longevity. So head to NutriSense website, nutrisense.io, how it works. You can learn more about your habits, your routines, your relationship to food, a little bit more. Great app to use, and it can sync on to different programs, so you can put it all together. So if you want to get started with your journey in NutriSense, I suggest this to all my clients. Use at least 30 days. So you can do a 30-day, 90-day, different programs, but you can pick which one you want. You get the sensor in the mail, put it on, lasts for 14 days, sync it to the app, and get your readings on there. And then if you're doing my VIP coaching program, I'm working with you to correlate this data together. So begin your health optimization journey with NutriSense, and you can save on your order with our code, as usual, Low Carb Athlete. So no carbs is not our goal, it's carb timing, and using NutriSense, you can help figure out your nutrient-dense whole food plan and when to adjust your macros based on your exercise intensity, duration, based on your life stressors, and learn more. So it's nice to have this data. So test and not guess with NutriSense. Let me know how you like it.
Hello, it's Debbie, and I just wanted to record a podcast on heart zone training and metabolic efficiency testing, and so much we can learn about how we can create a personalized training and fueling program for you based on functional lab testing and our metabolic assessment. So I'm excited to say today I did a metabolic test on a friend, did his resting test and treadmill test. Probably not the best example of someone because he's been following his MAF, max aerobic function heart rate training, and doing low carb, keto carnivore type of animal-based diet for some time now. And his test was pretty fascinating, but it identifies areas that you are not working on. So we know that this client should be doing a little bit more zone 5 to zone 1 interval training, maybe 2 days a week. They are super efficient at burning fat as their main fuel source for a long period of time, but the goal here is to get faster at that peak fat burning heart rate. So not just doing zone 2 training all the time, because that is what he has been doing, but how else can we improve our fat burning ranges and how do we get faster at those lower heart rates, right? So for years, I've been talking about maffetone style training, max aerobic function heart rate, and looking at how we can train the body to be efficient at fat fuel source by how we eat, when we eat, and then how we train. So this example today was, hey, this person's really good at burning fat, but how do we get faster? Well, that's where we need to add in speed work. So training in different zones instead of just zone 2, there's a time and a place for speed work. So after you have built up a foundation and you've been doing a lot of lower heart rate training, but after a while, hey, I'm not getting faster here. Yes, I'm great at burning fat, but again, as I say, we want to look at fat loss, performance, and longevity. And hopefully we have goals, we have motivation to get improvement in all those areas. But if we want to improve performance and we already are good at burning fat, well, that's when we look at zone training. So what is your zone 4, 5? What is your zone 1? How can we do that 2 times a week? Key workouts, warm up and cool down, short and sweet, get that heart rate up high, say 160, come back down to 110. So recovery-based training and knowing when to go up in that heart rate again. So I love this testing information that I will be doing if you are in North San Diego. It gives us so much more areas of improvement, identifying your limiters, but also going, hey, what you've been doing is working really well, but let's take it to the next level. We've built up that aerobic engine, amazing, keep it up, but let's move on to improving your speed, your performance. So the zone training, what we learn as metabolic efficiency coaches and testing people, we're using the data we collect in a test to figure out what exercise intensity do you switch fuel sources. So when we go from fat fuel source to burning carb fuel source, so metabolic flexibility, so we can switch from fat to carbs back to fat. We're also looking at what exercise intensity drives a fuel switch, what zones are specific for your athletic goals. Each person switches fuel sources at different heart rates or loads as your speed or wattage, if we're doing bike, based on your system's ability to provide energy at each intensity level. So our zones will be specific to cycling, if we're doing a bike test, for your cycling numbers, running on a treadmill for your test to figure out your running zones. And we'll identify those limitations. So where do you need to spend more time, areas improving your breathing frequency, your aerobic VO2, oxygen in, carbon dioxide out? Where are we just dropping down really quickly in your oxygen and training at around those numbers, heart rates? So zone changes significantly with the right training protocols. So again, test and not guess where you should train, how you should train, your frequency of doing speed work when appropriate, and when you should just do base training, as this client's been doing. So we want to be specific in our testing and then retest every quarter for sure, so we can create a new program. So we want to look at what fuel sources you're using by each heart rate zone and your training type. So how should you fuel for this training workout, matching your fuel and training together, and then figuring out when you don't need to eat as much or when to place carbs in. So that will be very individualized when I work with clients, because it goes to when you're eating, when did you eat dinner, what did you do the day before, when is your workout, is it anaerobic, speed work, high-low heart rate, or is it a zone 2? Okay, so for training is zone 1, that's your recovery. So that's where we'll come back to after speed work. So we do free fatty acids. That's where you're using, yes, free fatty acids means fat, zone 1. And then zone 2 is your long, slow distance, your cardio, your maffetone. We've talked forever about the max aerobic function heart rate, zone 2. This is aerobic glycolysis, so burning fat and some carbs, but mostly fat. And that's where we'll figure out in your test what those numbers are for you. And then zone 3 is where I think a lot of people train too much in. So if they haven't been doing a zone 2 specific workout, or maybe they're guessing zone 2 is the wrong numbers, they could be possibly training too much in zone 3. Zone 3's tempo, your longer intervals, that's going to be more anaerobic glycolysis. So what we identify with the lab testing or your metabolic testing, where do you start to burn more carbohydrates and your fat start to drop down? Your metabolic crossover point is your top of zone 2. So zone 3, you're burning some fat and a little more carbohydrate. So going back to zone 2, we identify that where your peak fat burning is, and then your metabolic crossover point where the carb usage goes up higher than the fat fuel. And then zone 4 is your medium interval training. Lactate phosphorylation is zone 4 fuel source. And zone 5, where I'm trying to focus on my workouts a couple times a week, short intervals. So that 20, 30 seconds under a minute, where we're working that phosphocreatine, that where we're talking about just creatine the other week, but ATP PC. So we're creating fuel source from that creatine phosphate energy source in our muscles. That's why I'm taking creatine beforehand during those workouts. Structural training is what will identify what you need to do. Structural means training focused on changing the limitation specific structures. So this should be your primary mode of training to minimize or eliminate structural limitations, especially at the beginning of the season. So this is what we learned in our metabolic expert training program. So the delivery examples of a structural program would be to increase your cardiac strength, to increase respiratory volumes, and examples of utilization would be increasing mitochondrial density or increasing capillarization. And then resistance would be, of course, muscle hypertrophy. So that's what we'll do. More functional training. This is what we find if you need to focus on more functional training. That's what we focus on, making specific functional improvements. So our primary training focus, if no major structural limitations are identified, or can we employ it in conjunction with limitation-specific structural training? So what would functional training be? Intervals to improve speed, coordination, modality, specific strength, hill climbing, etc. And then if we are working on functional strength resistance-wise, I'm more familiar with this, improving maximum strength, your strength in general, your power, and then your muscular endurance strength. All right, so that's why we want to test and figure out your areas of opportunity. Do we need to focus on more specific structural goals or functional goals? So we want to test to not guess and identify which structures are leading to performance limitations. What is holding you back from improving your speed? Is it strength? Is it your aerobic capacity, your anaerobic capacity? What might it be? We don't know until we test to identify these limiters. So we want to train you at the exercise intensity, which zone is specific for you based on where you are right now, not my test 10, 15 years ago. That was my best. I'm going to look at where I am right now. My frequency of a workout, the type of workout, and the time I need to be in each zone required to impact my limiting structures. So therefore, I will be minimizing or eliminating that limitation. So for example, today, if this client wanted to get faster, he's got amazing aerobic fat burning capacity and just stays burning a lot of fat for a long time, and his metabolic crossover point is later. But when we got up to that zone 4 number, he went down, got fatigued fast. So we want to get faster for him, as I said already, doing what's limited structure, doing more zone 4, 5 intervals. Again, more is not better, less is more. Training that way 2 days a week when you are in prime condition to do speed work, that would be related to your stress level, to your quality of sleep, your deep sleep, more restorative recovery sleep, your heart rate variability score, your readiness score. So we want to listen to the body. Female athletes, we're going to look at your menstrual cycle, not doing the HIIT hard speed work zone 5 to 1 that's more stressful in your body in late luteal phase, so day 20 to 28 or so. So the zones we want to work on recovery. Why? So let's go through each zone and the benefits of them, as I've done before, but just good to review again. So this zone 1 is more the structural. This stimulates our oxygen delivery beyond utilization requirements, which increases our oxygen delivery to our limbs, arms and legs. This stimulates elevated breathing pattern to promote metabolic waste and carbon dioxide clearance. So this is normalizing our pH balance, at acid-base balance, and recovery. So the zone 1, that's why we want to make sure we're doing zone 5. We come all the way back to zone 1 before we start the next interval to get to zone 5. Zone 2, this is a structural and functional training benefits here. This is that so-called, LSD, long, slow distance, continuous cardio, our happy place as endurance athletes, Forrest Gump. If you are like myself, my friend I was working with today, we've done Ironmans, long distance stuff for years. So we need more speed work. We know how to go low zone 2 and stay there a long time. So this way we can figure out, all right, I'm good here, but what if you're not? What if you're opposite? You need to do more zone 2 training if you're too much in zone 3. So increased mitochondria density, increased capillarization, tissue adaptation happens here, and endurance is obviously improved, because as Ironman athletes, that's what I used to always train in zone 2. So now as I'm an aging athlete, retired endurance athlete, I need more speed work. Zone 5 to zone 1. Not more is not better. Don't do that every day. So zone 3, this is a zone that I think a lot of people stay in too much. I was running today, keeping my heart rate at 130, even though I was pretty slow. I was watching someone else do a run. He passed me up in Torrey Pines and he was out of breath. I could tell he was probably hanging out in zone 3 his whole entire workout. If you do this all the time and do a test, we may identify your peak fat burning zones are really low. So this is where I really find most athletes tend to do too much of this black hole training. So what happens in zone 3, this is tempo, long intervals, not where you should be all the time. Lactate shuttle, protein stimulation, VO2, cardiopulmonary development happens here. So these are all structural benefits. And then if we need more functional benefits, we have more speed endurance. So maybe we're working on like 3 by 10 minute tempo pieces if you're trying to train race pace for a half Ironman or a half marathon. Now, structural and functional training benefits of zone 4, these are the medium intervals, a little bit longer, maybe you're doing more than 1 minute, 5-minute pieces. This is structural benefit here is if we need more work on metabolic buffering. So that good area here. And then functional benefit for people that might need more coordination work with their breathing, maybe it's muscular. I know like hill repeats is something that'd be good for me to do strength and speed and coordination. So that's zone 4. And then zone 5 is where we find if you are great at zone 2, maybe you need more work in zone 5 because we can still improve mitochondria density here, which is a structural benefit. Capillarization, structural benefit. Coordination and strength are functional benefits. So zone 5 are your short intervals, that high intensity interval. So as I said, we find zone 1 is finding your adjusted fat max. That's going to be where you're burning the highest amount of fat and the lowest carbohydrate used. That will be the top end of your zone 1 or bottom of zone 2. So if we can identify zone 2, the intensity potent recovery will be below that. So zone 1 is 10 to 15 beats below that adjusted fat max to find your zone 1. And then as that would make our zone 2 be above that. So your max fat, which is the top of zone 1, bottom of zone 2, to the top of zone 2 is your fat carb metabolic crossover point, where we see a dip in the fat and the carbohydrate increases. This is a zone where aerobic glycolysis is the main fuel source before carbohydrate utilization exceeds fat utilization, making a switch to anaerobic glycolysis. So that zone 3 that I think a lot of people hang out way too much in, this is why we want to find those zones for that individual so they can train in their true zone 2. So they're training more that mitochondria benefit and the fat burn should improve. Zone 3, we find by finding your fat carb crossover point, and then the top end of zone 3 will be your VT2. So that is where you start to get more anaerobic. So that's VT2 minus 10 beats, and we'll see increase in your breathing frequency moving from the mid 20 to 30 breaths per minute, and a rise in your expiration, your CO2. So we're going to see changing in your breathing. So zone 3, your breathing frequency is driven up, and that will show increase in the carbon dioxide production. The pH changes that initiates in zone 3 changes the fuel source to that more anaerobic glycolysis. So then zone 4, we're going to find VT2 minus 10 beats correlates with the increase in your breath frequency moving from 30 to 40 breaths a minute to see that rise. And then your breath frequency is in response to the increase in your carbon dioxide production. Your pH changes that initiates at zone 4. So you're getting more acidic. Secondary to the fuel source system here is, as we said before, the lactate level. So zone 4, you're going to get increase in lactate phosphorylation. And then zone 5 we talk a lot about is at short intervals, and that's going to be that next change in your breathing frequency. So we saw zone 4, what did you say, 30 to 40 breaths. Now zone 5 is going to be 40 breaths or higher per minute to your max heart rate, where we need to stop the test, where we get to exhaustion. So your frequency, breathing frequency changes in response to the carbon dioxide production. The pH changes that initiate that zone 5 to a different fuel source in the ATP-PC, so your phosphocreatine. And if your max heart rate, we don't find it during the test, it should be pretty close, depending on how hard you can push that last minute or two, even 30 seconds, wherever we can get to that highest heart rate that you can go on that day, that's where we're going to find, or what you have seen. Like I just saw 165 heart rate the other day, so I know I can get there. So if I can go, I don't know if I can get to 170. I used to see 170, but I don't know if that can get that high again. So if we want to identify before your test, what heart rates do you normally train at? So remember, the zones are specific. They're not going to be almost the same or different. They're not going to be crossover to your bike, to the run. So it's more sport specific. And really focus on how we're using this to create a personalized program for you to reach, if it's fat loss, if it's performance, whatever your goals are. So then we're going to look at these factors increasing your metabolism at rest and then exercise, and we'll put together a program. So the resting test is pretty interesting. We're going to do that before your exercise test ideally. We'll see at rest how much fat to carbs you're burning. Ideally, we should be burning 60 to 75% of our total energy and at rest from fat. And Your TEE is a total energy expenditure in healthy sedentary subjects. Other two components of our TEE are physical activity and energy expenditure, and our diet-induced thermogenesis, or the thermic effect of food. So we can look at kind of how many calories you need at rest, and then also we call that the TDEE, per day without exercise and daily activity. So your resting metabolic rate are your calories burned at rest, and the number of factors that influence that are your body size, your height, your weight, your age, your gender. And if we can do muscle body fat testing, find out your fat-free mass, muscle and organs versus your fat mass percentage, and take that into account. So we want to look at that resting metabolism, and there's many factors there that go into that. So your genetics, your growth, your age, physiological stressors are going to make a difference in that. I talk about that all the times. Chronic stress impacts everything. And your hypothermia, it says, during the cold therapy, your shivering increases energy expenditure and heat production. Your fat provides most of your heat at low intensity shivering, and carbohydrates become dominant during intense cold exposure, but we want more brown fat. That's kind of part of the reason of cold thermogenesis. We also look at other factors influence your resting metabolic rate are your sex. Resting metabolic rate is higher in men than women, as we know. But also there's differences in body composition, your fitness level, menopausal status, or age. I know I'm 51 and I know my body composition. I'm really working hard on these sprints and heavy lifting because I'm trying to fight that change in my hormones. Thyroid, epinephrine hormones increase in the resting metabolic rate. So I know I have slow thyroid. I did my hair tissue mineral analysis test and my hormones and my Dutch test I need to redo. But identifying if you have slower metabolism, sluggish thyroid, sluggish adrenals, that will make a difference in your resting metabolism, I believe. And resting metabolic rate increases during growth, as different ages as you are if you're a teenager, and the growing tissues and the energy deposited in those tissues. So growth, of course, will change your resting metabolic rate. But I think it's great to do the resting test so we can identify your resting metabolic rate, your fat to carb ratio, and then we can figure out what your macros should be with exercise and without exercise days. So we want to make sure we get good insight of all this data we can collect. Now, when I'm testing people, I have them do nutritional therapy test assessment online beforehand. I want a 3-day or longer food log matching your nutrition, your macros, and looking at your energy, your exercise, and then looking at your sleep and your heart rate variability scores. But when we do the resting test, it's a minimum of 5-hour fast with no alcohol, nicotine, or caffeine. We want no exercise, vigorous exercise for at least 48 hours and light exercise for at least 24 hours before the RMR test. And we want to do the test when hopefully the day before was your rest day, so you're not overtrained. But it'd be a good snapshot of what you normally look like if you're overtraining. So we want to test. It just takes 10 minutes, but we want to come before and chill out and relax. So lots of good information there. And we can find some interesting information on factors on resting metabolism. So if you have had a long-term high-carb diet or high-fat diet, increased or decreased glycogen stores, your energy balance, your total fat mass, your growth, pregnancy, gluconeogenesis, lipogenesis, chronic over-exercising, type 1 or type 2 diabetes, all these different factors we want to look at. So fun information, guys. I think you should find someone to do a metabolic test on you and figure out how you can train a little bit more accurately, but then looking at your food source. The other thing I think it's interesting is if we can look at our genetics and figure out how you should train based on your genetic report. So if we look at the DNA company, they have great information. I just had mine open, but I don't know where it went to. But looking at your genetics and all of this. So I was pulling up my report from the DNA company on exercise and tying that together. So I was looking at, here's my report, fitness, rest, and recovery. And this will give me indication, more clues we can collect, more data. What kind of workout was best to me, for me on genetics, rest and recovery tips, my fitness, rest, recovery profile, and it will give me my workout breakdown, best for me on genetics, which is funny because I used to be such an endurance athlete, and I still am, but I'm not training, on my bike ride, doing 5-7 hour long bike rides and running 2 to 3 hours every weekend. And all my workouts during the week, I was doing 4 swim workouts, 4 bike workouts, and 4 runs at my top of my athletic career as a triathlete. And then I would do that year round, even though I'd switch to trail running or marathons. But I look at my genetics, and I've done multiple reports, and they always tell me more of a power base than endurance. So this report from the DNA company says weightlifting 80% of the time and 20% cardiovascular should be my split, which was never in the past life of my focus. So weightlifting, my report on genetics says avoid multiple reps at your maximum weight for any exercise. Follow general rule of heavier weights but less reps for exercise. I'm doing 3 to 5 reps when I lift weights now. It says cardio, no more than 60% of your max heart rate. You should be able to do little difficulty while conversation while working out. Workout duration, my genetic report says weightlifting up to 3 days a week, no more than 45 minutes per workout. Rotate between exercises, different muscle groups every day. Well, I go to the gym right now pretty much Monday through Friday, most days, maybe 4 days a week, doing 45 minutes of weights. Cardio, no more than 2 days a week, no more than 45 minutes of workout. Well, I go swimming 3-4 days a week, and that's hour to hour 15 minutes for masters. I run 3 days during the week, about 45 minutes, and then longer on the weekend. That's hour and a half to 2 hours I cycle through. And then bike ride, my long bike ride is not so long. It's short for me, but 3 hours, maybe 4 hours this summer. Hopefully I'll get longer, but I don't have any race to train for. So that's what I'm doing. So I'm not definitely doing 20% cardio. So what else it says is when is the best time for me to work out based on my genetics. So my sex hormones function based on circadian rhythms. Estrogen functions on a monthly cycle as a menstrual cycle, while androgens function on a daily cycle. This says, while the best time to work out depends on my goals, the following rules can be generally applied to the most optimal performance to each gender. So, as a report for males, I'm a female. So it talks about, I won't go into it all, but looking at your cycle, day 5 to 10, follicular phase. This shows the best time to engage in strength training and weightlifting. Schedule your heaviest, toughest, and highest endurance races during that follicular phase. And then ovulation for women, days 11 to 16, somewhere in there. This is when estrogen levels rise. The risk of injury, particularly to tendons, increases. So during this time, sure you allocate extra time to warm up, stretching, and cool down exercises for your workouts. And then luteal phase is after that, day 17 to 28, or if you're at my age, you have no idea when your cycle is coming. It's the second part of your cycle, progesterone levels rise to their highest, and then same time estrogen's dropping. So this is when we will be more impacted on endurance and performance. So don't try to hit certain goal speed work, or don't be disappointed because things will be off this time. So you'll be higher heart rate, more dehydrated, get hotter. So go slower and go easier. So focus on luteal phase, maintenance over gain. So don't push yourself to the max. Great time to take extra rest, recovery days, deload week, that 4th week of your cycle. So you want to just think you're preparing yourself for your next cycle. So really, women, we feel good for 2 weeks and feel crappy for 2 weeks, or 3 weeks. We're good 1 week off. So it's pretty funny. Men, you got it easy. Now, limitations. how to embrace your genetics is more that how our lifestyle habits are, right? So checking out this is pretty cool report. I really like the DNA company, what they're doing to look at the whole picture and give suggestions. My habit recommendations here, my lifestyle recommendations, as well as this exercise. So love this stuff. For men, your report, if it was like mine, more weightlifting, cardio, it says testosterone peaks between the hours of 6 to 8 a.m. as well as 4 to 6 p.m. So ideally, this is the best time of day for you to work out if you're trying to work with your hormones. Testosterone shares direct inverse relationship with cortisol. So testosterone levels rise when cortisol levels drop, vice versa. So as males age, their overall testosterone levels decrease. So important to take the advantage of the times when they're highest to get the best ROI on your workout. So testosterone, 6 to 8 a.m., 4 to 6 p.m., that's when you have the testosterone peak in your day. So that's ideal time to work out. Explosive performance, about strength and weight training. You probably feel more hungry after these workouts, so stick to working out in the evening to reduce risk of overeating in the day. Evenings for cardio, shortly after 6 p.m. they suggest here. Running in the evening reduces risk of injury to the muscles that are otherwise stiff in the morning. This prevents you from overeating all day. It can be a great way to reduce stress, help you fall asleep if you struggle with poor sleep. Now, make sure if you're working out at nighttime, you're not doing your speed work right before close to bed and you're getting your heart rate back down. Maybe you're cooling down, maybe a cooler shower, not cold shower, because that will wake you up. But really be careful working out too close to bed. I know it totally messes up my sleep. So that is just interesting information. I think really getting a personalized program here, just really great tips on this report. The building muscles recommendations, the L-carnitine, whey, or vegan protein isolate. For rest and recovery, my genetics says NAC, selenium, milk thistle, essential amino acids. It says branch, but I'll say amino acids, and CoQ10. L-carnitine, I have some of that. I'm trying to eat just more meat, but I could take the supplement and then whey. It doesn't say creatine, but I would add creatine based on my current investigation. So hopefully that gives you some help. Testing and not guessing. Genetics, functional lab testing. I would do a urine hormone test as the Dutch test, or the saliva test for your hormones, cortisol in there, and then your GI test, a stool test to check out your gut bacteria, overgrowth of opportunistic bacteria, H. pylori, beta-glucuronidase. Your fat in your stool will tell us there's steatocrit if you're eating all this high fat and you're not breaking it down and absorbing it, if it's coming out in your poop. And then looking at your blood chemistry panel, looking at insulin, A1C, but also the inflammatory markers and other clues that we can get, and then putting that with your metabolic test at rest and during exercise, and genetics would be the ideal personalized program. Then even more if we use NutriSense, get your continuous glucose monitor, or use Keto Mojo to get your glucose in the morning, post meals, and figure out what's going on to really figure out, are you doing everything you should be doing? What do we need to adjust, course correct, and make it more designed for you? All right, let me know your thoughts, questions, and feedback. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at debbiepotts.net. You can help us to continue to grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.